You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com to see the many different shirts we offer. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee, our other co-host. You may have seen walking out of a great clubs with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him at a dirt track. He is Scott Bowie. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, Aaron. How are you?
Living the dream as always. Before we get into anything else, we have a great show today. Our guest really needs no introduction, Jack Hewitt.
Jack Hewitt. Those two words alone is enough to get you to know exactly what you're getting into, because he is who he is. He doesn't change, and he is outspoken, and he is a throwback, and he is one of a kind, and thankful to have him, because Jack is a treasure.
Oh, absolutely. And before we talk about that anymore, I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also check us out where podcasts can be found. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, we're probably on it. Make sure you like and subscribe on there as well. And we definitely appreciate everyone listening and watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to everyone. Hopefully, again, you're going to find this a interesting talk. Jack is, as I'm sure everybody out there knows, who's ever heard Jack talk, he's a very passionate guy, and he, and a winner, big time winner.
Yeah. One of the greatest sprint car drivers of all time.
Yeah, he's got over 40 USAC National Sprint Car wins. He's second all time on the USAC Silver Crown win list. That was just taken over from him by Cody Swanson in the last 2 years. He's a two-time USAC Silver Crown champion. He has over 50 wins in the All-Star Sprints and countless other hundreds of wins at local tracks and late models, and everybody who knows anything about him, he's remembered for two things. He's remembered for his incident with the flagman at Macon Speedway at a midget race, and he's also remembered for winning the Four Crown. I was lucky enough to be there that night, and it was something special to watch.
Absolutely. Great guy. I got to talk with him a little bit in person at Eldora a couple weeks ago, and he always has a story, and he always makes times for the fans, and super nice guy.
He's got a hell of a memory too, because I have thought since I was a little kid that the first time I ever saw him run a Silver Crown car was at Terre Haute at the first Silver Crown race at Terre Haute in the early '80s. He goes, "Boy, I don't think I ran that car," and I said, I think it was Jack, and it wasn't. It was Johnny Parsons. I looked it up afterwards. So never question Jack's memory, because he's got a long one.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, do we have any racing news? So first off, I think it was off week for a lot of the series. Obviously, IndyCar, they start up at Nashville this weekend. NASCAR was off, and that was all, as we were just talking about, because of the Olympics.
Yeah, so really a odd dead time in the sport. I think for the teams, I think for the NASCAR side, I think it was a welcome relief, and I think for the IndyCar guys, it was a little too long. Because I think they were right in the heat of the battle, and then they had to take almost a month off or over a month off. And now that it all revs back up again in Nashville, obviously street course, first time there. I know the city's rolling out the red carpet for the event. The city and the promoters have spent a lot of money. It sounds like most of the seats are gone. Most of the hotels that have viewing are gone. I think that was pretty limited to begin with. And hopefully it's a big event. Hopefully it's a moneymaker. Hopefully it's a good race, because they sure need different tracks, and they need great places like Nashville to race in.
Absolutely. And then after this weekend is the doubleheader over here at Indy. IndyCar, NASCAR on the road course. That's definitely will be a great weekend.
Yeah, and it'll be a good weekend. BEC 39's thrown in that mix as well. Finally, it's coming back. So, man, what a great time period that period of time will be, and get to see a lot of great racing at arguably the world's greatest race course. And as far as other racing goes, in the short track scene, USAC concluded Sprint Week. Boy, it was a tight battle. Kevin Thomas Jr., even though he didn't win a race, came out on top of the championship fight for the Sprint Week title. A couple of guys who were fast all week, the way they do the points, though, you got to be consistent. They had some issues at a race or two. Logan Seavey kind of had a breakout week. He had 3 wins in a row. Justin Grant had a couple wins. So it was very competitive, great racing. They beat Mother Nature every night. So, man, hats off to them. Except for Gas City, I guess, where they had to go back and run it on that Monday. But hats off to them. That's a tough week. I've done it a couple times, and it's a grind. So congratulations to Kevin Thomas Jr. And that's going to keep on rolling. I don't know where USAC's at next, but man, they still got a big busy schedule coming up. So and the USAC midgets are getting ready to go out east. No, I'm sorry. The USAC sprints are ready to go out east. I forget which. Maybe it is the midgets getting ready to go back out east. But anyway, so USAC still in tough competition. All Stars are just running tons of races. Knoxville's coming up here, not too far distance with the Nationals. So, man, a lot of racing coming up. Even though we're getting close to the end of summer, it is definitely heating up in the racing world.
Absolutely. And Formula One, Esteban Ocon won the race. Definitely great to see, someone else in victory lane. I know you were saying Lewis was still having some problems. Ferrari's crashed.
Yeah, Lewis indicated that he, I guess, is still suffering some side effects from COVID. And I'm not sure quite what happened with the Ferrari, but I know Ferrari is thinking that they should be paid for their crash damages, which I don't know if they understand that they'll have to write checks too in that situation. So that should be interesting to see if they could actually get that passed. I don't see that happening, but
no.
Good try.
Yeah, I guess you can try.
You can try.
Well, another racing news, Eric Rudolph is officially the most popular driver in America this week.
Yeah, he is. East Coast modified star, big black guy, great racer, but he is not being known for his racing. Aaron, would you like to expand on that?
I would. This is a fun little thing I thought we'd share, and it's been all over Twitter. This past weekend in Lollapalooza, Post Malone was on stage. He was a headliner Saturday night, and he had on a Eric Rudolph shirt.
And that's big, man. You can really move some merchandise. I know you said that you looked online and you didn't think he was actually carrying that design anymore.
No, they were posting a link to buy the apparel, but I looked on there. I didn't see the shirt. I didn't look that hard, but I saw Eric Rudolph shirts, but I didn't see that shirt. So if they were smart, they definitely need to get that one out there, because people, when you're a big name like Post Malone or really any celebrity you can put your face or name on anything and you can sell it. So it's great. So I don't know how Post got the shirt, but possibly he gave it to him, and Post is a cool guy. I could see him giving them the shirt and him being like, okay, I'll wear it. So, he could have ran into him somewhere or whatever, but that's some great marketing. That's clever if he did, kind of come up with that plan.
And hopefully it works. Well, hopefully they sell some merchandise. Short track guys always need money. It's a very expensive sport. And even though $5,000-$10,000 sounds like a lot of times you're not racing for that much money at that level. You're running for $2,500, $1,500, $3,000.
Yeah.
So merchandise sales really help.
Well, I now know who Eric Rudolph was, and I would have known before. So it's given him awareness. So that's for sure.
That's right.
Well, do we have any other racing news?
Man, I really don't have anything. At least nothing pressing. Um,
Well,
not that I can think of.
We've recorded several really good podcasts the past couple of weeks, so definitely looking forward to that. Like we said, we have one Indy 500 winner. He's a current IndyCar driver. We have another current IndyCar driver. And we have some, definitely some real big historical guys in the sport, coming up, and definitely looking forward to releasing those.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been interesting. It's really interesting to listen to different people's perspectives and what things meant to them. And I think sometimes from a fan side, it looks a lot different than the reality is from their side. And so it's always kind of interesting to hear that. And we're really anxious to be able to share them with everyone, and hopefully everybody enjoys them.
And to be completely political correct here, one of them is a female, so I shouldn't say we have some good guys coming up. So
that's right, that's true, and I do the same thing. And we plan on having a lot more women guests on the show.
Absolutely.
It's timing right now. This time of year, it's kind of hard to get some people because they're racing. But as the season winds down, I think we're going to see our guest list expand and really try to pull people from a lot of different areas and different backgrounds, and just kind of cover the full scope of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we'll go ahead and jump into Jack Hewitt interview. We don't really need to say anything else about Jack Hewitt. I think the man kind of speaks for himself. So.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely does.
All right, well, I hope everyone enjoys.
It's not a Christian podcast, is it?
No, it's not. No, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that with us.
Okay, well, I don't want to screw up and say something that I shouldn't.
Our guest today is one of the greatest sprint car drivers of all time. He won 2 USAC Silver Crown championships and competed in the 1998 Indy 500, finishing 12th. We're joined by Jack Hewitt. Hey, Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good, Aaron, and Scott, both of you. I'm doing great.
Oh, that's awesome, Jack. It's so good to hear your voice. What are you doing right now? Are you doing a lot of fishing these days, or what?
Normally, I haven't been up here right now since I got back up to Ohio. When I'm in Florida, that's all we do. But right now, we got that 13-year-old grandson, and he keeps us hopping pretty good.
I bet.
So obviously you had a great career, great USAC career. You got to race some Indy cars. How and when did you first get interested in racing?
Well, I've just had a wonderful life. Here I went all them years and didn't believe in anything, and then I found Jesus, found how blessed I was. But and now that ain't gonna stop me from saying shit or something here a little bit. But I just still want you to know. But when I was born, my dad was racing. And, of course, everyone wants to be like their dad. So I just wanted to race. And after I got out of the Army, I bought a race car, my buddy Mike Loftman and I. And we went racing, and we've been doing it ever since, or we was till I got hurt.
You obviously, if we're just talking about record books and just going through someone's career, you have just an outstanding career in open wheel cars and late models and modifieds. You're kind of a guy who could run anything. When was the first year that you got to actually sit in a car and drive a car?
When I was 16, my dad's owner, Junior Hefner, which is here in Troy, he owned my dad's race car, and he let me, so, that would have probably been, 67 or 68. I got to go up to Lima Land and hot lap Dad's sprint car one time. And then I think a couple years later, I got to drive Dad's car at Eldora for Nickel Brothers. And and I stuck it in the wall. The only thing that saved me that day was it rained out, so I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. Dad didn't get mad. At least he was on the gas. And Nickel Brothers, as long as we was all right, they didn't care. And they hired me later on, so they weren't too mad either.
Yeah, and that's, if you go through your career, you've driven for just legendary names of the especially the sprint car world, and Nickel Brothers being one, and Hampshire, and the list just goes on and on and on. What you talked about Eldora, and obviously that place is the place you're most associated with. Even though you won so many races at so many racetracks, Eldora is just the place that is synonymous with Jack Hewitt. And I know your father had a real love for that place too, right? And,
well, Dad was. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Absolutely, go ahead.
Well, Dad was the first one to ever go around Eldora before Earl started racing, but he had the track out. And Dad was the first one to ever go around there. And then I don't know, it just got to be where, like I said, for me, that was our first racetrack ever. In '73, after I got out of the Army, that's where, we bought our car at the end of July of '73. And after you run Eldora, the rest of them all get easier.
I would say that the only tracks, dirt tracks that rival Eldora would be Belleville, Kansas, and the miles maybe. But other than that, Eldora it's its own thing, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people you can run 20th there, and if you're up against the fence, you still ran a heck of a race, If you ran around that thing for 25 laps up there and finished the race, you're just as pumped up as you ever was, let me tell you.
What about Eldora do you think makes it so difficult?
I think because it's so scary, it kind of sorts the men from the boys, Everybody else goes there and they do pretty good. I'm not saying they don't one way or the other, but other than, I'll say, well, Kyle Larson for sure went there and his first time ever won 3 out of the 4 at Eldora. And then Ricky Stenhouse there every time, I think first time ever there in the wing. He had fast time. I don't think he won the feature. And maybe he did, I don't know.
For someone like me who's never raced and may not understand the tracks, like someone like you who's raced them, what about Eldora do you think makes it so scary? Is it just a fast track, or maybe not a lot of banking?
No, it's fast, but everybody knows Eldora the fast way around, right up against the fence, and
Right.
And the fence is pretty intimidating, For me, somebody went up to me one day and said, well, where did you hit the fence at? I said, it'd be quicker for me to show you where I didn't hit it.
That's right. Yeah, Aaron, to put in perspective, I mean, especially late in the night at Eldora, the cushion is just inches off the fence. So a lot of times, and Jack, please correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times you just got the rear bumper rubbing on the fence. I mean, that's just how that place is.
That's it. My dad went and told me one time, and he took his fist and he put it right up next to my jaw. And he said, if I hit you in the mouth, or, put it up by my mouth, he said, if I hit you in the mouth, do you want my fist just a couple inches away, or do you want it 3 feet away? Well, I want it right up there close. Well, that's the way it is at Eldora. If you get up there and put her on the fence, it don't hit very hard. You're right there. You might get into it and rub it and everything else, but that initial bang is not as bad, so it makes it a little bit better.
Never thought about that.
And we was just comfortable up against the fence, so it kind of, we went to Belleville, it was the same way, It was right up against the fence, and that place just was pretty comfortable to me also.
Yeah, I mean, I think for guys like you who get used to that, that's it's easier. For somebody like you, it's not easier, but it's you run the fence almost seems just as easy as trying to run the bottom.
I watched the kids today, and when you can run the fence at Eldora, and I'm saying with the wing or without the wing, either one. To me, it's about like going and watching a ballet. It's almost to the point that I can't believe I used to be able to do it. I mean, it's so much fun to watch them up there. Like I said, it's just skills, all it is.
And for anybody listening who's only seen Eldora on TV cannot do that place justice.
No.
You have to see it in person, and you really have to see it from the infield. Stand down in the corner to really to really get an idea of what that place is all about. I remember one of my more favorite racing stories. I took Paige Jones there, and this was after Paige got hurt, and we went over there. I forget what year. I'm going to say 2000, something like that, 2001, whatever. And John Wolf was running, and John Wolf come over to Paige and asked him how he's doing. He said, Paige, you went pretty good here. And everybody has to remember Paige got hurt at Eldora. And he goes, what does it take to go faster? And Paige just looked at him and said, you got to quit being a pussy and get up on the fence.
Yeah, well, let me interrupt here one thing. In 1993, I was leading the sprint car feature at Eldora at the 4 Crown. And, we was leading the feature and got in that crash. And that's when I broke my neck and got hurt and everything. And then the very next, and I drive for Hamp,
yep.
And 6R Racing. And the very next year, Paige was with 6R Racing in the sprint car, not just the Silver Crown. But he was leading the feature, and that was 94. And daggone if he didn't get hurt. And he hit the fence leading. He was leading the feature and everything. And he got in the fence, and that's when he got hurt. But probably one of my neat states, I don't mind changing mine off Eldora or nothing, the story, but we was at the Chili Bowl. And I don't know what that would have been, 95 or 96. I'm not really sure. Oh, no, it had to be 2000 when I built the 2-seater.
Uh-huh.
And, Johnny Beaver and Tony Beaver built it. But we put it together. It was our idea. Anyways, we got the Chili Bowl. Well, the first rider ever in the 2-seater was Paige Jones. And, my first number was 98. Between my dad, Pernelli was right up in there. And, anyways, after Paige got out, he kept coming up to me and he said, Jack, your driving style is just like mine. And I just kind of blew him off, let him talk a little bit. And daggone a little bit later, he said the same thing. He said, Jack, your driving style is just like mine, the way you get on the gas, set the cars for the turn and everything. I said, I know, Paige, that's why we're both hurt.
Yeah, I remember there's the photos from that too. Like your arms are in perfect. Arms are in perfect sequence. I've seen those photos before, and the 2-seater has a fake wheel in the back for people to hold on to, and you can see it doesn't have an arm guard on the left side, so you can see the arms. And Jack's arms and Paige's arms were in perfect sync.
Every picture you see, they're like that. And then afterward, a little bit later, we're standing there talking, and Pernelli's there. And like I said, I didn't know him that well. I knew Paige and PJ a lot better than I did Pernelli. And anyway, I told Pernelli said something to me. And I said, Pernelli, I said, I wouldn't have hurt Paige Jones for nothing. And man, he put me in the headlock, he said, you don't let him think I would just let him ride with anybody, do you? Oh man, I rode around I had a big P on my chest that night, let me tell you. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's great, and I know Parnelli really has a lot of respect for you, and as well as Paige in that, and but you were speaking about your dad. And you talking about Eldora. Now, tell me if I'm wrong. I thought I read this somewhere one time, and please tell me if I'm incorrect. Did Eldora used to have like a 500-lap sprint car race?
They had 3 of them. Yes, they did.
And your dad would get paid to qualify other people's cars, right?
The 1 year he did. 1 year he had fast time, and then because Dad was one of them that would put her up on the fence quite a bit, so everybody come down and say, hey, Don, qualify my car. And I guess he's charging them $20-25. and I think because they had the rule then that the car made the race, not the driver. So after 11 cars, Earl come down and said, okay, Don, you can't qualify no more cars. You're done. And that was a pretty wild deal.
Yeah, you talk about Earl, and for people who don't know, Earl Baltes, and Earl was a promoter of not only Eldora, but what were the other tracks? Dayton and Toledo, right? As well?
Not Toledo. We had Dayton. Okay. We had Dayton and Mansfield, New Bremen and Lima and Findlay.
New Bremen's one I was thinking of. I didn't know about the others. But Earl, he wasn't like Earl was like a musician, right? Didn't they have that dance hall there at the track?
That's
And
what he
then
did originally.
and he was a musician originally. Then he got somehow or another, I'm sure Jack knows, got into promoting races, and he's promoter of Eldora, and he's such an innovator in the sport. Especially when it comes to paying big money. And what was Earl like? Because I never really knew Earl. What was Earl like?
He would come down if you did something wrong, according against him. He would come down and scream and yell, and you think he's going to tear your head off. And 5 minutes later, he's just as cool as can be. He gets just as wound up as a race car driver on race day, And I mean, I got along great with him because him and my dad drank a lot of beer together. But we grew up with him, and it was just, for me, it was a great relationship because, I mean, he come down and yelled at me one time the whole time I was racing, and like I said, 5 minutes later, he was over it, and so was I guess. Because, must have thought I did something wrong.
So you said, I'm sorry.
He was a good guy.
Yeah, the few interactions I had with Earl were really great. When you were, I forget what year you say you started. You said 73, is that right? When you bought your race car?
Yep.
So you bought your car in 73, and I remember you told me one time, or you didn't tell us directly to me. I was standing there when you were talking to somebody, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if I heard it wrong. You once said, I think, that in your opinion, to get good running sprint cars and open wheel type cars, it takes three solid years of running at least 40, 50 races a year. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, back when I started, it was a good deal, Today with the kids, but most drivers back in the day didn't start with top-notch equipment. You would drive there. Today you tell, what do you call a car owner? Dad. So they got money to come in, and back in the day it wasn't like that, and we started in lesser cars. Well, we kind of go along and have to learn things in a lesser car. Then when you start getting good cars, you had to go and learn the whole thing all over again, because now you learned the right way, and it just took a little bit longer. But fortunately for us, we had a lot more races back then to where, and I think what helped a lot of it, and I'm saying Kinder and Ferkel and Swindell and all of them, I said, is we'd go to Paragon and they didn't run wings, so we'd take the wing off. We went to Eldora and they ran wings. We put the wings on, and I think that just helped us be a better driver, because we had to run it both ways. It wasn't just a one-shot deal.
Right. When did you get to the point? Did it happen fast for you, or did it take you time before you really got to the point where you thought, man, I can really race these things. I can drive these things?
Well, the first year I didn't do nothing. The first half of the year, all I did was spin out. And then the next year, about a year to the day, we won our first feature down at Chillicothe, Ohio, and we beat George Harbour, which was, probably one of the best drivers down there at the time for sure. And I thought, we're going to be all right. Well, I'd win a feature here and there, but not a whole lot of them in the year. And I would say I didn't get started, and they get hooked up a little bit until later on in my career. I would say probably after about 7 years is when I started getting a little bit more consistent. And then we got some better rides, and we won a few more features. And then finally, there in 85 when we got hooked up with Hamp, then everything changed. The dam burst.
And Hamp, Bob Hampshire, for those who aren't familiar. And this is a man I've met briefly. I've talked to briefly. Tell us a little bit about Bob, because he's a really, seemingly a very quiet guy, goes about his business, but man, his race cars are always fast. Always fast.
Well, I just told the story the other day. In 1984, I was driving for Dick Briscoe, Chase's grandpa.
Sure.
And anyways, we turned around driving his car. Well, for some reason, that big 3-day show at Eldora, I blew the motor, I think. And on the final day, Schrader was driving Bob Hampshire's car, and he had to leave. So Bob asked me, because I didn't have a car, he said, well, would you like to drive it? Yeah. So anyways, I was driving for Bob Hampshire, and believe it or not, I was leading the feature and stuck it in the wall. And he said, well, would you like to drive my car? Well, he only paid 30%. I said, my dad won't let me. You know, he would shoot me if I drove for dad. Most drivers drove for 40%. That was just always the deal. And anyway, so he hired hide and shield for the rest of the year. And that winter, he called me and said, hey, I'll give you your 40%. And like I said, with the sponsors and things that came, he made money doing it that way. And like I said, I made a great friend out of it, and a great car owner. And it was so cool because his daughter's left-handed. He's left-handed. Todd Griffith, who worked on the car, was left-handed. My wife was left-handed, and I'm left-handed. So, you know, and then Bob, we wore the same size blue jeans, same T-shirts, same shoes. I mean, it was just unbelievable because if we forget something, the other one had us covered anyway. So it was meant to be.
Right. And that relationship lasted for,
on and off. I went probably through 85, 86, 87, probably most of 88. And then I got mad and pouted, and then we split up for a little bit. And then we get back together and split up again. And then, I don't know. Like I said, I'd have drove for him whenever it was, you know. It didn't make no difference because it was just, he knew what I was thinking before I did.
Right. I remember the first time I personally remember seeing you race. I believe it was the Radio Hospital Silver Crown car at the first Silver Crown race at Terre Haute. I believe you ran. Would that be? I mean, that you did run that car, right? I'm not remembering.
Yeah, but I don't think we ever ran at Eldora or at Terre Haute. I think the only place I ever ran that was Springfield and the Coin, and up at Nazareth when it was dirt, and I don't even think I ran the Hoosier 100. I might be wrong there, but then Eldora we ran a few times, but I don't think we ever ran at Terre Haute.
I thought I get stuff mixed up all the time, so I could definitely be wrong. I just thought that was the first time I saw you run. The first time I ever saw you run, but it very well may not have been the 80 Silver Crown race at Terre Haute.
Yeah.
So you like you kind of alluded to a while ago, you're kind of an outlaw's outlaw. I mean, you got the outlaws who would kind of follow. They kind of ran everywhere, and then they started following Ted Johnson's kind of schedule. But then you didn't even really do that. You would hit the money shows. Is that would I be fair in saying that?
Yeah, people would call and ask me to drive the race car. It really worked out for a couple of years there. I never had the actual ride, the steady ride. And I would so people come in and say, hey, drive my race car. And I said, yep. Whether it be California with the wing or up there without the wing or back here, whatever. And I say, yeah. Well, then it got to be, I probably could have made more money as a broker because they would call me up, say, hey, you want to drive my race car? I can't, I've already committed, but such and such on it. The drivers would call me. So I would tell them who to call, and I'd fix a lot of the drivers and the car owners up so they had a driver for the night. And like I said, for me, it was just so cool because I got to meet a lot of people. And, last weekend, somebody asked me, how many cars do you think you've driven? I couldn't number them. I couldn't name them all because there's just been so many of getting in and out of them,
Right. Yeah, I can't. I couldn't even imagine trying to.
Oh no.
Trying to calculate that.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be scary.
So like I said, you ran anywhere, everywhere against whomever. But you did run a lot against, the Steve Kinzers of the world. If you could, that was a really interesting time. I always feel for sprint car racing because it, so much of what Carl Kinzer and what Doug Wolfgang was doing and Sammy was doing. So much of what they were all doing kind of has made the modern sprint car, I feel. What was that like kind of in that period where you guys were just, the rules were a little more open and it was just kind of a more wild and woolly time?
Well, back in the day, there wasn't a lot of rules. There wasn't a cubic inch rule or tire rule or a company rule. It was just kind of run what you brung. And it's kind of back then, it's like today, the sprint car is almost cookie cutter, like the NASCAR or the Indy car, and back then people could still build their own cars. Lee Osborne, Bobby Allen, they built their own cars, and they was always competitive, whether it was Stanton, or Trossel or whoever the case was that built the cars, the manufactured ones. But it was just a different time then, because the drivers, we didn't have an organization to begin with. That didn't start till 78. There was a group called the Racers before that, a couple of years before that. And I think that was Ted Johnson also. But then in 78, when the World of Outlaws started, that's when everything changed.
Yeah. And Ted, what kind of guy was Ted? Ted's someone I never met, and I wasn't really around the outlaw scene. What was Ted Johnson like? I mean, he seemed like he must have been a relentless worker. For all those races.
He was a promoter. He knew how to do it, and to me, he was a great guy until he made a lot of money. When he got rich, he got to be a dick. I still liked him. I tolerated him, but he wasn't like the old Ted Johnson, But, he had a lot more on his plate, so I guess that the stress is what made him that way. I don't know. I'm going to give him a little benefit of the doubt, but he was darn sure good for sprint car racing.
Yeah, he definitely brought the money in. Helped, really bring that money in. You always hear people say, well, I'd race for nothing. Well, man, I don't know. You got to get paid sometime to do it, and you got to get good money to do it. So,
well, you got to have it because it takes so much to do it. But yeah, there's probably a lot of it that would have done it back in the day for nothing. I mean, because there's just no feeling like it. Like I tell people, drug addicts they give you a drug to get off of drugs, which I don't get. But racers, when we go, it's cold turkey, man. You're done, and that's it. And I mean, there's nothing in the world that can take the place of it. There's just nothing that can fill that void. They don't make nothing that awesome.
What is it? I mean, because I was never a driver. I've been around the sport since basically the day I was born, but never a driver. What is it as a driver? Is it the feel? Is it the speed? Is it the feeling of control? I mean, is it the immediate response? Kind of what is that as a driver that makes it what it is?
Well, I would say that, it'd be like shooting a BB gun or a .22 rifle and then picking up one of those 50 caliber sniper rifles. You know what I'm saying? That just, right. It's a total, it's that much, it's awesome, and more. I think what it is, I'm an adrenaline junkie, like most racers, and I had all the long hair and beard, but I never, ever did drugs. I wasn't never much of a drinker. I drank some, but I really wasn't much of a drinker either, but I never did any kind of drugs anywhere. But I guarantee you, if they ever come up with some kind of artificial adrenaline, I'd be the first one in line. Because, it's the more you got to lose, the more you gain from it, I guess, how I want to say. And a non-wing sprint car definitely will bust your butt.
Yeah, those non-wing sprint cars, nobody runs them very, for an extended period of time gets away without some kind of injury.
Yeah, well, you're lucky if you do, and like I said, I don't know if my second one that ended my career, that was a big factor for the first one. I wouldn't have been that bad hadn't I already gotten hurt, you know what I'm saying? But most people stop after they break their neck one time. Well, of all the things in racing, I never was called smart, so that didn't help. And I definitely wasn't wanting to walk away for daggone sure.
Right. And so you did a lot of racing in Australia as well, right? And that's usually during the winter?
Did. Yeah, 11 winters we went over there and raced. The first 4 was with the late models, the USA Racing sedan team, Coca-Cola. And that was more like big-time wrestling in a race car. They took 4 Australians against 4 Americans. And, I mean, I've never seen anything fire the crowd up so much. People would spit on you, throw stuff at you, do everything during the race. And then as soon as the race is over, they come down and want your autograph and take you over to where they have barbecues every night after the race at every track just about. They were Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but once you got them, they were there. It was a pretty cool deal.
Sounds like a lot of American fans I've seen.
Yeah, well, and that's, like me, I went over there the first year and I thought, and people are going to find this hard to believe, but I was kind of backward and I wouldn't talk a whole lot. I thought the people don't know me over here. I'm going to learn how to talk on this microphone, and now you can't shut me up.
Yeah, I've never been over there, but anybody that's ever been over just talks about how passionate those fans are. Whether it's the midget guys or sprint car guys or late model guys, they just talk about how passionate those fans are over there, and they get big crowds. I mean,
well, the difference is they don't. I mean, they've got baseball a little bit, not a lot. They're big in the cricket over there, without a doubt, and then football. Which our day was whoever. You remember? And I know you're not supposed to say this on TV, but that's what we called it when I was a kid. Was called smear to queer. Remember that? Where whoever had the ball, everybody. You didn't have enough to have a team, so whoever had the ball, that's who gets after. Well, that's their football. They're like that. To me, that's what it reminded me of. And anyway, so it just they don't have a lot of sports. So racing is one of the top because they don't have as many to choose from as what we did. So I think that's why it was a little bit more popular for sure. But I think one year, counting Australia, because I'd go over. I don't know. Sometimes I'd go over in late November, but the best year I ever had, because a race car driver, the drivers now, I'm not saying the guy that worked on them and did all that, because I worked on them and stuff when I had to, but if I didn't, I just showed up with my helmet and drove. But anyway, I did 150 races one year, and counting Australia, of course. But still, that was a good year just because we got that many races in.
And you probably would have done 151 if given the opportunity, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I wouldn't even stop for it. It's not that a lot of the drivers today wouldn't do it that way. They just don't get the opportunities. Brian Clausen was going to go for the record there, I think. Kenny Schrader had been the most before that because he was racing everywhere, anytime before myself or any of the other guys have even thought of it. He was kind of the trendsetter. And so it kind of went on. Well, now Kyle Larson's definitely carrying it on.
Well, look at how many races Schrader runs a year right now. I mean, he runs a ton.
And
what's kind of sad is people have forgotten how great a open wheel driver Kenny Schrader was. Man, how great he was in the Silver Crown car and the midgets and the sprint cars.
Schrader's deal was the only problem racing is he always knew what the payoff was. If he knew what first paid and second paid, and if it wasn't worth going for that extra bit, he knew what he was going to finish second. But we were just where was we just? Oh, up at Tony's, Eldora at the SRX race and the Silver Crown race. Anyways, Dale Swanson, the yellow and blue 21 car, had just hired Kenny Schrader for Springfield Mile and the Coin Mile. Cody Swanson was in at Eldora, but now Schrader's going to be in it for the 2 mile races.
Really? Wow.
And I don't know who's more excited, him or the 21 team or me. Because I think now he's in the car, and I ain't bad enough the cars that he's in, but I just know what this car is capable of doing, and I look for Kenny to be up toward the front on both of them.
I remember the last time he ran midget was at Chili Bowl, but I don't remember the last time he ran a Silver Crown car.
Oh yeah, he was in one 2 or 3 years ago.
Was he?
That orange number 8. No, I don't know if it's 18, but it might have been 14. That was the orange car, and you would remember the people if you'd seen it. He ran a couple.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, you ahead.
Yeah, I know what car you're talking about. I do. I don't remember who has it, but
yeah. But anyway, and I'm not, like I said, I wasn't bad mouthing it for sure, but I know that Dale's car's got the Toyota in it and everything. So I'd say he's definitely. I'm looking forward to it. I know that.
Yeah. Wow. I am too now. Now that I know about it.
And he's excited. That's what makes it better. He's excited about it, and we were just standing there. I was standing there talking to his wife, Ann, and she said, "Well, why don't you go ask him?" And we went right on over, and Kent and I did. He was the mechanic, Kent Walter, and I went over and asked him, and he said, "Heck yeah!" So that's how it all worked out. And gosh, I liked it. I can't even wait. I'm going. I'll be helping my nephew out, of course, but I'm still excited about Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny Schrader is the guy that I remember watching him run midgets in St. Louis area, like in '79, like he was driving for Bud Hoppy and people like that, and I just Kenny's always been one of my favorites. So yeah, I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, well, like I said, so am I. I just know now he's going to get his show off again, so that's good.
I like the other day when Jeff Gordon got in Tim Clausen's midget and did some laps over at the Speedway, and you could see in Jeff's eyes how you know the look. He got out of the car, and man, you could see him kind of catch that bug a little bit, for just that brief moment.
If you're in any open wheel car, if you're out there by yourself or with somebody, it's still going to get you fired up without a doubt.
Oh yeah. So we talked a lot about your career, Ned, and you and Robbie Stanley are the only two guys to ever win a USAC championship and the All-Star championship. And I speak of Robbie because he was such a great racer himself, and but you really, for whatever reason, those Silver Crown cars and you had such a great relationship. What was it about those miles that you just loved?
I really can't say for sure. The big cars had a little class, and realistically, you didn't think that you'd ever going to make it to Indy. That would be as close as you would ever get. And like I said, to me, it's just racing with class. They were the big cars, and they just, like I said, my first race that I ever went to, I saw Andretti and Unser out at Springfield in the Viceroy cars, and I was kind of hooked in, and we just went over to watch that day, and I just know I always wanted to run one, and I think, and then my buddies bought one, I think in '78, and I made my first Hoosier 100, and that's when they only took 20 cars by qualifying, and I think Sammy and Leland, Vogler, and Steve Cannon, and Steve Hicks, Roy Hicks was in there, and Duke Cook, and a couple of us, and we made the race. So I actually got to be in the race with AJ Foyt, and I was in it with Gary Bettenhausen at the time, and just unbelievable. And like I said, to me, they suited my driving style for some reason, and we were good in a lot of them, and then when Gussie come along and with Hampshire, that just changed everything, it just, and then after that, we just got more comfortable and just was doing better in them as we went along.
Yeah, you were just something to watch in those cars. I watched you win a lot of races in those things, man. But it's one of those things where it was such a. I mean, it's just like you were born to run those cars at those miles. It was really something to see.
I think one of my proudest moments there, I was at the Coin, and we were racing, and Gary Bettenhausen went, and he broke, and he's out of the race. And I think we was leading then, and here Gary Bettenhausen is down in turn 4 with his bad hand and give me a signal on how far ahead we was, you know. I mean, that's just pretty awesome to have somebody like him signaling you, you know.
Yeah, that had to feel amazing. You know, obviously you're a giant fan of the sport, as well as a driver. I mean, you can just hear it as you speak about it. Your passion and your love for it. So I can only imagine what that was like. Because Gary Benhausen, again, just a great race car driver.
Yeah, and like I said, he was kind of the head guy, I would say, and then kind of we came along, and I'd say we beat his record. Now, I don't know that for sure, you know, and then Cody Swanson come along. I guess you're allowed to have him for 20 years, and then you lose him, you know.
Right.
So I don't know. It might be a little longer for Cody Swanson. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's going to take a while for somebody to get to those numbers.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Especially if we keep losing racetracks, you know, losing the Indy Mile. That's so sad. I don't even know what to think about that. But, you know, I understand what the city's doing, but, boy, I hate to see it. I hate to see it go away.
Well, you know, money is not going to buy everything. And like I said, that's all it was about. It's about money. It's, you know, right. And I know the horse race people go and they made it worthwhile for them to do it that way. But where, as a city goes, does the history part come into effect?
Yeah, there's a lot of changes coming in the next 20, 25 years. It's really going to put this sport in jeopardy, you know, when it starts coming to electric vehicles and stuff like that. I really don't know where this sport's going to be in 25 years, but that's why I've really, you know, it's easy to take it for granted, right? You know, if it's always been there, it's easy to take it for granted, right? And
yep.
The older I've gotten, the more I realize, and I look around, I think, man, this sport, it may disappear in my lifetime. So I'd better start appreciating it more than I have recently. So I've tried to, you know, at least do a little more within the sport. And that's kind of one reason why I joined Aaron to do this podcast. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of my love letter to the sport. You know, it is in a way that I just want people to give their stories. You know, it's my way of giving back to the sport, where we're allowing people to, or actually people are allowing us to share their stories. That's how I should put it. And,
yeah, well, the thing to me, you know, how bad they screw up tomorrow, they can't take yesterday away from us.
Right.
And I look at the kids today that's racing, you know, and you go there and it's not like back in the day where if you crashed, you could about went to any race car and borrowed anything it took to go racing that night. Well, today they don't even hardly talk to each other, let alone loaning parts and things like that, you know.
Yeah,
it just changed, and it's not for the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's really sad on some level because people they get in their big haulers and they don't really acknowledge each other today. And whereas especially in your day, you know, especially early in your career, you know, when you're going up and down the road constantly, everybody's got to kind of help each other, because, you know, you're going to have vehicles break down. You know, you got to get to the next race. You may need parts, and you may not be able to get parts for 3 nights, and, you know, and stuff like that. And people really have to work together for everybody to keep going. And it's so much different today.
Absolutely, it definitely was. But I think the bonding was a lot better then for that reason, you know, because everybody pitched in to get there to make sure you was at that race, and it just made a big difference, I think.
I agree. You know, when we had our cars, I used to bring some spares, and, you know, anybody that needed anything, I would loan it to them if I could. You know, if I couldn't, I couldn't. But if it was something I could loan out, I would do it and not even think twice. And this might even be someone maybe I don't even get along with very well. But yeah. I don't want to beat you at your worst. I want to beat you at your best.
Absolutely.
You know, that's how I always appreciate sport. You know, you were kind of talking about your personality and that, and talking on the microphone, and obviously, you know, so many people talk about your run-in with Billy Shipman, the flagman, and that sort of thing. But I think lost in that was is that I think one reason why that resonated with people so much is because you were somebody who was willing to speak his mind, and when maybe like your fans, they would like to be that person who could speak their mind, but they couldn't. And I think that's kind of what you represent. Is like the same with Tony Stewart. You can like him or not like him, but you know what you get with him. You know who he is. And you know that he's going to tell you what he thinks. And you were the same way. And I think that's why I remember toward the end of your Silver Crown career, just the giant roars that you would get from the grandstands. And I think that's because, not only because you won so much, but because of how you won and who you were as a person.
Well, I always told people that, you know, I never was the best race car driver. But I guarantee I was one of the better ones for the fans, because I'd stay till the last person was there, whether we won, lost, or crashed. It didn't make any difference. We were there for my fans the whole time, and it would get to be if they came down to see the driver that they liked the most, but he wouldn't give them the time of day, or, you know, was too busy doing something else, they'd come to my car. Well, that's how I became and got a lot of fans, you know. Like I said, I might not have been the best race car driver, but I guarantee we could have ran with anybody in the fan section, because we treated them as good as anybody. Let me just tell you one story, and it's ended up pretty neat. We was at Waynesfield one day, and this girl come walking up to me, and this was about 4 or 5 years ago, and she said, "You probably don't remember me." I said, "Sharon." And I couldn't have given her $1 million at that time, and made her any more happy. She had the biggest smile. And what it was, when I just started racing, I was running Nickel Brothers up at Lima, you know, and she was just probably 12, 13 years old. Her and her sister, every year they come down every week after the races, of course, but then they'd bake me a cake on my birthday, and I'd be back on. They came to the Hewitt Classic this week, and she didn't make me one this time. She went and bought it, but she brought a birthday cake there. Of course, they was proud, because it's going to have 70 years old on it, but I don't care. We survived it, and just for somebody that's been around that long to still think of us, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think the thing with racing, racing is just so fan driven, and I mean, you can go to an NBA game or NFL game, and I mean, you can't get near any of the players to save your life. And, you know, I just think that's one thing a lot of people like about racing is just, you know, being able to, you know, go in the garage area, go into the pits, being that close to the cars, and, you know, being that close to their heroes.
Well, you know, when we did Indianapolis, there's the Indy gang that hung out there at the corner by the gate the whole time. For the whole month, they just hang there. Yep. But they're outside, you know, they're not in the gasoline alley part. They're just outside the gate. Well, my wife and I would get on the golf cart, and we'd take our hero card, and we'd go out there and chat with them about it every day and sign autographs, because everybody can't get back into the gasoline alley section. And, you know, that meant a lot to a lot of those people, just because we come out to be with them rather than the ones that couldn't come in to be with us.
Right. So kind of getting into Indy. So in 1998, obviously you run the Indy 500. How did that deal kind of come into fruition?
Well, we went and got we got the rookie test at Phoenix, because, you know, I'd been there every year, and I'd hang out for a day or two, you know, during practice. But here I had long hair and a beard, and I mean, I definitely didn't represent the kind of racing that the Indy crowd needed, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
So I was just kind of spinning wheels all them years. Well, then I got to take a ride out of Phoenix and pass my rookie test, but that don't count for Eldora. And so we ran Eldora. We ran Terre Haute on Wednesday night, I think. And I just stopped and slept in my van at the truck stop there in Brazil. And the next morning I get up and I call Bob Parker. He said, "Man, where you at?" And I said, "Well, I'm in Brazil." "Get over and go to Sendon's garage. We want you to do your rookie test." Well, Bob Parker's the one that made all that possible for me. You know, Parker Machinery, and he's the one that made all that possible. So we went to Sindon's, and they said, well, look, you know, we went to the garage, and they said they put me in Steve Kinder's seat because he drove for them the year before, and I said, yeah, that'll work. So they said, well, let's go to Speedway and put it in Jack Miller's car, you know, the Crest car. And so we got in there, and when we went in, it was raining, so it wasn't no big deal. We just killed in the afternoon. And time we got the seat in, the belts all adjusted and everything, they said, hey, the track's open. Would you like to go out and take a couple laps today? And then tomorrow we'll do your rookie test. And I said, absolutely. So we went out, and we did 2 or 3 laps. And he come in, he said, well, how's it feel? I said, well, you know, just riding around, it wasn't no big deal. A pace car could have passed me. He said, well, go out there and do some laps and just, you know, don't go kill or nothing, but just go out there and just do some laps and fill the car a little bit. So when I come in, they weighed me in finally, and he said, well, you just completed your first phase. And I didn't even know I was on it, you know. And then he said, well, you all right? And I said, yeah. I said, we're not even gassing it. And he said, so we went out and did our second one with, you know, Indy, they blow the whistle at 6 o'clock, and that's it. You know, you're done.
Right.
And Tony George let him. He said, well, do another one. So we went out, and they let us go after 6 o'clock and finished our third phase of the Indy rookie test, which I was still 1 short. So then Bob Parker went and got with PDM, you know, Paul Alovich and Chuck Buckman, and they got a deal worked out, and Bob sponsored the car and everything, and we took our 4th rookie test. You know, I got the final test I took with them during practice in May, and then we made the show. I tell everybody that was like a Hollywood movie, because the only 2 things that was missing was a little sex and violence, and but I mean, it went down to the point where we crashed right off the bat. We fixed the car. We went out, and here I was supposed to be the second one to qualify. And I want to say it was Roberto Guerrero, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Anyways, he scratched. So I was the very first qualifier. And, of course, we waved off. We wasn't fast enough. So then later on that day, we went and we made the show. I mean, we didn't know until the following week, of course. But then when we made the show, well, my row even straddled the yard of bricks.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, and then here we turned around, you know, and we started the race, and we finished the race. I mean, and that was with a spin out and everything else in the thing. Right. And it was just, and like I said, it was just like a movie, I think. For me, it was anyways.
What do you think? And
that's the only race I ever missed at Eldora, because I was perfectly healthy, and I was going to leave soon as Indy was over and go to Eldora running a sprint car race. But I just didn't want the Indy deal to ever end, and I signed autographs till dark.
Right. What do you think was the hardest thing to get used to, going from driving, you know, a sprint car, Silver Crown car, to driving an Indy car?
Keeping my mouth shut. Yeah, you know, and like I said, that's when they, you know, if I had something to say, they knew it. And every time somebody would say something, all the reporters would come down to my car, you know, and you know, I just tell things. It just comes out. I don't think before I speak.
You know, you mentioned the Parkers and Bobby, you know, Bob and Bobby Parker, obviously. And wow, I mean, like you said, I mean, you know, again, these are people who maybe some fans don't know about or never heard of, but boy, they've been an instrumental part of, you know, of this sport as well. They've done so many things behind the scenes to help people, and to help, I believe they even helped renovate the Indy Mile, about 8 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that, put up catch fencing and stuff like that. So
he helped with that, and he kept Anderson going. I mean, he had a big hand in Anderson, you know. And then, like I said, so year in '98 when we won the 4 Crown, they owned the midget, and then with 6R, it was Bob's chassis, you know, that we used, and it turned around, and but 6R, they were just using it at that time instead of a Beast chassis. But yeah, between 6R and Bob Parker and Bobby Parker, and I mean, of course, Biddle was there with the sprint car, but it was just an unbelievable night. But Bob Parker was a big part of that, you know. And now little Bobby Parker got in that crash, you know, and he just keeps needing more prayers. He got pretty bad when he got rear-ended and drove into that truck with all them pipes in the back, and he's not out of the woods yet, but he's hanging in there. He's a pretty tough little dude.
Yeah, I will be honest with you. I don't know much about that story, so I'll have to find out a little bit about that. I'm kind of out of the loop, so I don't talk as many people as I normally do. So, but yeah, I sure don't wish anything bad to any of the Parkers, because they have been such good people to the racers and to other people. So I hate to hear that. You were talking about the 4 Crown, and of course you won all 4 divisions. Do you consider that the highlight of your career, or is there so many highlights that you can't really just pin it on one thing?
Well, the Indy 500 and that would be right there at the top. But to have like I said, I tell everybody when I talk to someone, probably one of the neatest awards that I have, or one of the neatest places where my name's at, is there was only 3 people that ever won the Triple Crown with Silver Crown. And that's the Hoosier 100, the Bettenhausen 100, and the isn't that terrible for DuQuoin?
I know what you're saying. Ted Horn. Ted Horn in the
Ted Horn, yes. And there's only been 3 people ever win that. And to have my name on that piece of paper with Jimmy Bryan and Al Unser Sr., oh my gosh, that tickled me to death. I'm pretty proud of that one over any of them. And then to be picked for the top 25 of the 20th century, that was a great honor. And to be in the Hall of Fame at Knoxville. But, like I said, as far as for me, the 1998 4 Crown and the Indianapolis 500 definitely on the top of the list.
Yeah, I was at the 4 Crown that night, and that was really, it was special to watch. That's for sure. It's something that I won't forget. I'll tell you that. And you were really. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. The only thing I did wrong that night, I didn't play the lottery, because I think I would have won it too. It was just our night.
Yeah, I remember watching. I don't know which race it was. Maybe the Silver Crown race, and the way you were running the cushion and the top, and man, I was just watching it. It was, I just was blown away that night watching you run. You've done so much racing and all of that, and then, like you said, then you got injured. What year was the injury that with your eye? Was that before the 4 Crown?
That was 93. That was before Indy. Yeah, that was 1993 when they got my eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened in that crash?
Well, that broke my neck, my arm, and killed the 6th nerve to my eye, and I had to get it operated and turned it out. And it turned out that after Indy, they said, well, if we're going back next year, could I have the man, the head guy there be on the left side? Because when I look right, I kind of double up. My eye don't go out far enough. And, of course, I don't never tell anybody that forever. But then we still got to go to Indy because of it. But yeah, that got my eye. And then the next one, there in 2000 at North Vernon, when I broke my neck, all they did then, I broke my neck, and they give the right side a paresis deal. And I get so mad. I go up and somebody said, did you have a stroke? Hell no, I didn't have no stroke. I broke my neck. My heart's good. Yeah, they insult me because I know it looks like the best one was at DuQuoin, walking through the pits in Hampshire. I just had a little stroke, and it messed up his right side. And we was walking through the pit there, and he was about 20 feet behind me. And we was, out in the grass where nobody around. But finally, we got up to where there's about 20 people standing there. And I just turned around and screamed real loud. I quit making fun of the way I walk. Because he gets embarrassed so easy. And he was telling Brady, I'm going to kill you, he said. But he wasn't making fun of me. He was walking the same way.
what would you say? I mean, when you look back at your career, are there any disappointments that you say, "Man, I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that."
If not could have done, I would have done. Like I said, and I'm not sure today if I would change anything because I just had such a wonderful life. Like I said, I limp now, my right arm don't work, but I've always been left-handed, so that'd be no big change. But I just had so much fun doing everything. If I would have cut my hair and cleaned up my mouth a little bit, not said everything I was thinking, I don't know what we could have done. Maybe we'd have got to Indy sooner, or something like that. But I wished I'd have at least got to take a ride in a NASCAR, just to say I did it on ARCA. But the other night we went to the SRX race at Daytona or at Eldora, and I'd only met Ray Abraham one time at the PRI show, with John Bickford, Jeff Gordon's stepdad. And I met him, and here I come walking up at Eldora. He said, "Did you bring your helmet?" And oh my God, what an honor that was. I just kind of swelled up. David Sherman said the same thing, but for Ray Abraham, and he sat there and talked to him for a while. I thought, well, at least everything in our life wasn't bad. At least they knew who we were. And like I said, when you can look up at the ceiling at night when you go to bed and grin about something, you've had a great life. And I do an awful lot of grinning.
You kind of alluded to a while ago, and I've heard you kind of mention this before. Got, and I don't know how religious you ever were before, but you've gotten very religious. What was? I mean, you kind of alluded to it. Kind of changed your life. I mean, in what ways did it change your life?
My change was I added Jesus to it, And what happened is, what happened, that story was pretty cool because, well, it wasn't cool, but I got, it was 94 or 93. I got my halo off like in December. January 6th, Mr. Hunt passed away down in Florida. And luckily I had my halo off then. We went down to the funeral, and Doc Miller, John Miller from Tampa, Florida, he was real good friends with Jen Opperman and Rich Level. Well, he come up to me after the funeral, and we got to talking about racing because he used to race, and like I said, been fan buddies with those two guys. We racing, and I forget what we. But then when he asked me a question, he said, "Well, do you believe in Jesus?" I said, "Oh man," I said, "It's not that I said I don't, but it's not that I don't want to." I said, "I just can't believe all these stories that man told, and I have a problem with that, I said, "I want to believe. He said, "You're not an atheist, Dan." He said, "You're an agnostic." Well, when he told me that, the next step was easy. I went back to Florida there in February for the races, and for 2 weeks while we're down there racing, I wasn't, but I was still down there. He answered all my questions about the Bible and all my doubts. He just took away. Then we turned around and come back home, got baptized, and Jesus and I have been pretty tight ever since. But like I said, I still will say shit and a few things like that every now and then, though.
Yeah, one thing.
Know the rules.
I've been to a couple of the autograph signings they do on Legends Day at IMS before the 500, and that you've been there a couple times. And I'm actually looking at one right now. But you would have these posters, and it was it's like a drawing of your IndyCar, and it would say like Team Jesus, and it would have like all of this religious stuff on it. And I was always curious on kind of how how that happened, or how you kind of came up with that poster idea.
I was driving to Florida one year. It's 2 a.m. I'm in Atlanta, or I'm in Georgia, below Atlanta. And I got my favorite story in the Bible is when Jesus and the boys were fishing, And when Peter asked Jesus, do you, Jesus asked Peter, he said, "Yeah, do you agape me?" He said, "No, I phileo you." Well, anyway, they said that a couple times. And then he asked Peter if you phileoed him, because that's the second highest love, And he asked Jesus, asked him that, and then he said, "With all my heart." So I got thinking, if Jesus was a fisherman, which I like to fish, I said, here he is. He's a baseball player. He's a football player, a basketball player. He's a racer. So then I got to thinking about, of course, sprint cars come to my mind, but the most amount of people would be NASCAR without a doubt. So let's see, number 10, the Pearly Gate Company as a sponsor. You know, Goodyear tires. I mean, it just excites. Jesus, you got to slow down. I don't do shorthand, and my memory's not that good. So anyways, it went for 9 months. I mean, I had this image in my head, but nothing. I never did anything about it. I told a lot of people. Well, then we went to Lang's Chevrolet over in Xenia for this Toys for Tots, the Marine Boys put together. And there was a guy over there, Ron Titus from down south of Dayton. He was the artist. And I told Judy, I said, right there's the guy that's going to do my posters. So we went and did a NASCAR one. And the news story about that went pretty cool. The artwork was $2,200. And I went up to Schrader and I said, Schrader, I need you to buy a picture. And I told him what it was. And anyways, he agreed to doing it. Well, I took the original one, the actual artist's work, and I took it back to Ron Titus. And I just had Kenny's dad, Bill, put above the door, you know, like where the driver is.
Right.
And they said down there in North Carolina, you'd walk in his office, and right there was the only picture behind his desk was that one, you know, with his dad up down there. But then Randy Steenbergen, you know, the Fin Express guy, he went and he paid for the Indy car was my next one. And then we did the sprint car, you know, without the wing or with the wing. And I thought, well, you know, the uniforms and all was pretty cool because of the pit stops and all that. They were doing pit stops. Well, sprint cars don't do that. So the crew, one guy had the King's Royal because of the King, you know, Jesus. And then Opperman, everybody knew him as the Jesus, you know, the preacher anyway. So I had both them guys wearing a King's Royal T-shirt and an Opperman shirt. And they were just great. I mean, and like I said, it wasn't that they were going to make a non-believer a believer. But if little Jimmy had it hanging in his bedroom and his buddy come over enough times, he asked one question, well, what does that mean? Then he's hooked, you know what I'm saying? Then he's on the right path to find out what Jesus was all about.
Right, yeah. No, I just love those posters, and I was wondering how many different ones there were. But, yeah, I just have the IndyCar one because you were handing out, I think it was probably the 100th, because you had a stack of them you were signing them for people.
Well, if you're going to go to one, I got a few left of the NASCAR one and the sprint car one. If you let me know the next time you're coming to Eldora or something, as I'm going to be there, if you call me, I'll definitely bring you the other two over.
Oh, yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I think me and my dad may be going to the World of Outlaw race in, I think it's September.
The Outlaw, not the King's Royal.
King's Royal, yeah, that's one we're going to, I think.
That's next week, Hillbilly.
Is it next week? Oh, wait, hold on. I'm all mixed up on my
not
days.
next weekend. Weekend after next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2 weekends. I'm sorry. So, well, anyway, you just give me a call before you come.
Okay.
Because you'd have to remind me anyways. And we'll get you fixed up.
I definitely will. No, I appreciate it.
Jack, I've been kind of thinking about this. I'm going to just throw out some names, and if you would just give a brief summary about them. And one of the first people that you mentioned was J.W. Hunt. Kind of briefly sum up J.W. for those who may not know who he is.
He was the oldest, coolest wild man you ever did meet, you know. He'd drink a little beer and whiskey when he'd get north of Florida. But he'd hit the Florida state line, he wouldn't drink a drop, you know. And for the difference in ages, and Charlie Swartz introduced us, because Charlie was driving his car, and Jimmy, his boy, and me, we're the same age. And he showed up, and the neatest story, we went to Lima Land. Well, Hamp and I was at Williams Grove racing, and it was raining that day when we woke up on Friday. So we said, well, let's go back, and we knew we were going to run Eldora USAC on Saturday. Well, let's go back and run Lernerville. At least we'll be halfway home. Well, so we headed for Lernerville. We got there real early. Said, well, Hamp, we might as well go to Lima. And then tomorrow we don't have nowhere to go. So we did. Paid $1,000 to win. Freddie Linder was there, and I don't remember who else. But anyway, it paid $1,000 to win. Well, when we left that night, Mr. Hunt gives us a couple grand to get his name on the car and give us $5,000 bonus for winning the feature. So we left that night with $8,000. And then I don't remember that the next night, but the next day I took him to the airport, and that's when you're allowed to go clear to the gate, you know. And I walked him up to the gate, and I only lived 13 miles from the Dayton airport. Well, anyways, we turned around and we're standing there talking, and he just went and put $1,000 in my pocket. I said, "What's that for, Mr. Hunt?" And he said, "Well, bringing me to the airport." And I said, "Well, I don't charge you anything for that." And he said, "You just..." So I told him, I said, "Well, Mr. Hunt, here's the deal." I said, "If I come down in February," I said, "I can't stay with you." He never invited me anyway, but I said, "I just can't stay with you." And he got that big look on his face. "Well, why not?" Like I offended him. I said, "I couldn't afford you to take me to the airport." And he got to laugh. He said, "I wouldn't charge you nothing." And I took that $1,000 and stuck back in his pocket. And I said, "That's just what I charge." And for 3 days, we went from a sponsor to a great friend. And I missed him when I died, you know. And for the people that got the book, this is probably, and like I said, most people wouldn't tell the story, but it happened. And you know, so we went to the funeral down there. And down there in Florida, it's a closed casket. They don't have open casket down there. But they do open the casket up for the family right after the people's kind of gone, or while they're outside talking, or whatever the deal. And after the family, Jimmy and Mrs. Hunt, you know, and the grandkids and everybody went in, Jimmy come out and he said, "Jack, would you like to go in and say goodbye to Dad?" And I said, "Absolutely." What was my wife and my son and I, we went in there, and believe it or not, I'm a big ball baby anyways. And I'm in there and I'm crying, and I reached over and kissed him on the cheek. Well, when I did, my nose ran, and snot just ran all the way down the side of his face. Well, you don't dare wipe it, you know, because all that makeup shit on. So I hauled ass out of there, and I went up to Jimmy Hunt, and Jimmy's in line, you know, talking to all these people because they're coming up telling Jimmy that they're sorry. And I said, "Hey, Jimmy," I said, "Man, I'm so sorry, buddy." I said, "I just went and kissed Mr. Hunt, and I dripped snot all down the side of his face. I didn't dare wipe it off. And now he's biting his lip to keep from laughing. You know, these people are trying to be there to console him because of his dad. Don't you ever do that to me again, you know." But just those great stories that nobody will ever know. Well, unless I do, because I'm not smart enough not to tell them. But he was a fantastic guy.
And some of these people a lot of these people are going to be racers. What about Chuck Gurney?
Chuck, I raced with him a lot. And him and I, we never hung out with anything. He was running USAC here before I did. But as far as Chuck and I became great competitors in the Silver Crown, you know.
Right.
And I think that's where Chuck and I got to where people thought of Jack Hewitt, Chuck Gurney at the same time, you know, because there for a while, if he didn't win, we did, or vice versa, you know. And that's where Chuck Gurney and I come along. But he was from California, and like I said, it wasn't somebody we hung out with or drank beer with or anything, but we had a lot of respect for him, and we still talk pretty good to each other today. We never had no crosswords or nothing.
A guy you mentioned earlier, and I don't know how much you ran against him. I assume somewhat, Jan Opperman.
But see, now, believe it or not, at the time, I wasn't an Opperman fan because he spoke dope, you know, and I was so anti-dope stuff, and he promoted it kind of. And did I ever cheat myself out of meeting? I mean, I talked to him a few times and things like that, but I really never got to be with Jan Opperman, you know, to see the real Jan Opperman. And here I was always a Kenny Welch fan because he was so straight and clean and everything. And here come find out Opperman just smoked a little pot, and Welch was a drug pusher. I thought, man, did I ever have that screwed up and wrong?
Yeah, that was pretty surprising to find out all that years later. I remember as a small kid watching Opperman run, you know, the USAC stuff and that. And wow, it just even be able to say I saw Jan run is still something I think is pretty cool. What about Ron Schumann? Now here's another guy from out west, laid back guy, but man, fierce competitor, right?
Absolutely, you know, and again, he's not somebody who was married and had a couple kids, you know, and I was still single and cruised around, and I'd say other than the Silver Crown, he beat me a lot more than I ever beat him, but just to be there on the track with him, pretty good honor. And like I said, he wasn't no dirty driver, didn't do nothing bad or anything to anybody that I ever knew of.
Dave Darling.
What a dude. He come up to me and said, Jack, how do you do the slide jobs at Eldora Speedway, And being from Indiana, Dave and I, now we've always been pretty close friends. And, then when he got sick, we give him a call and checked in on him. I don't want to bother him, but Dave and I got a lot of respect for Dave Darling. And, I think the 4 Crown is the most sad thing is here he had 2 seconds and a third that night at the 4 Crown, and nobody ever knew it, other than him, of course. But, I mean, he didn't get no glory at all, and he had one heck of a night, too,
Yeah, and that place was rough on Dave a few times, too.
But he won a lot of races there, too.
He won a lot of races there, yeah. And then I'll end it with I could ask you this question for 100 guys, but I'll end it on these 3. The first one, Sammy Swindell.
Sammy and I got into it a couple times, but we was down at Memphis one time, and he crashed, and the crew was coming down to get with him and to get after him. I said, Sammy, you better get up there on our trailer, and he did. And then all they did was mouth, and they left, and he got down. But then Sammy with Bobby Davis Sr., Bobby Davis Jr.'s dad, we went with Tommy Sanders, Sammy and Andy Swindell, and Bobby Davis Sr. and old Bobby. He was only probably 12 or 13 then. They invited us over Thanksgiving over to their house, and we spent Thanksgiving with all of them. And believe it, I got mad at Sammy. Everybody gets mad at Sammy, but they don't. To me, if I get into it with you, I'm over it the next day. And that's kind of way. Right now, I just seen where Sammy Swindell was redfishing, or going for redfish down in Louisiana, and if he gets to Volusia County this year, I want him and Kevin to go bass fishing with me while they're down there. I haven't talked to him yet. I'm gonna see him at the 4 Crown or at the King's Royal, hopefully, and if he's there, I'm gonna invite him down then. So, what a talent, He was good when he started, and he's that way all the way through, Personally, I think the only thing that he cheated himself out of was the fans because of his personality, and that's just the way he was. And I don't know if he really meant anything by it, but he just, he thought about racing all the time, where to me, I just drove, and that evidently made a little bit of difference.
Yeah, the 2 things that always come to mind when I think of Sammy Swindell is the first thing is meticulous. His car is meticulous. I mean, just such nice race cars, and 2, just a fierce competitor. I mean, just fierce. Doug Wolfgang.
Got no time for him. He's and like I said, as a talent, Doug Wolfgang's one of the best that ever was, without a doubt. But when he got hurt and he sued my sport and gave my sport a black eye, I've got no time for Doug Wolfgang. Now, I would never be mean or nothing like that. And when he comes up, we've said hi to each other, and then I'll walk away. I'm not going to spend no time talking to him, and I don't expect him to apologize to me or nothing. It's my sport that he gets the black eye. And like I said, as a talent, you can't take nothing away from him. But what he did to my sport, I just have a hard time with it. I got to forgive him. It says you got to forgive, but it don't say I have to forget.
Yeah, I in my lifetime, I've never seen anybody have a fall from grace within the sport like Doug Wolfgang.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, you sue it, and then you're immediately right back in the race cars as soon as you get to settlement. I just that didn't set right with anybody, I don't think. Last guy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the first thing, what got me started making excuses, said, well, my wife, no, you're the name that signed on there, no matter what, to sign that paper off for you to get that money was Doug Wolfgang. So he can't blame it on nobody but himself, I mean, and he's got to accept all full responsibility, and that's just the way it is. Life goes on, and if you can live with it, the rest of the racing community can live without it, not counting all the money that they give to him when he got hurt.
Yeah, and Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is somebody you knew that I never knew. But the last guy, and I think you already know who I'm going to ask, because you can't have a conversation about the best sprint car drivers or race car drivers without mentioning the name Steve Kinser.
He's the best ever. I mean, as far as sprint car drivers, it's just going to be like everybody else, you know. Opperman was a great race car driver. Foyt, Pernelli, Dick Gaines, I mean, Ferkel, Sammy, Wolfie, all of them. You say whatever you want, but at the top of that list is definitely Steve Kinser. I mean, yeah, you can say it any way you want to say it because he might not have been your favorite driver or whatever, but the record book shows that he is the man, you know, and he set the bar pretty high for everybody to get to.
Yeah,
But now
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna I gotta bring up a name. I know I'm gonna change your stuff. We'll come back to Kent in a minute if you want. But the worst one I got is Brad Doty. Now Hod's my buddy, and Kenny and all of them. And one of my favorite pictures is with Hod and Doty. But Doty, he has gotten. I crashed him up at Wilmot, Wisconsin, and to this day, I mean, we won the feature and we flipped him. He remembers it more than I do for sure. But, you know, he thinks I did it on purpose. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't stupid and I didn't do it, but I dang sure didn't crash him on purpose. But he's the one that I really know that still don't. He still hadn't forgotten that very well either, though. But, you know, like I said, I definitely don't remember ever crashing anybody on purpose.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember that, and I forget how it happened, but you and was it Kenny Jacobs? It was Kenny Jacobs.
Yep.
You guys got together in the 4 Crown, and you went ahead and I think you won, and he ran second or something like that. And that's the only time I ever heard the crowd boo you because he was just hard racing. And then you apologized to him right there in victory lane, and you know, and just you said you're sorry. It was just hard racing. I mean, it's just what it was.
Well, I just drove into him and got his tire hopping and blew a tire. And I waited for him to go back around me. I didn't know his tire was blown. And then I went on. But yeah, that and I felt pretty bad too. Like I said, Kenny and I had been friends the whole time. A funny story with Kenny Jacobs, though. We turned around and we was up at Syracuse Mile and he crashed. And it rung his bell really, really good. And he's come down to me and he said, Jack, I just can't remember anything. I had to get away from my car because I can't remember anything. I said, you don't remember crashing? No. I said, well, man, we're at Chillicothe. I said, you just went over the back straightaway. You ran over Wilmot flipping down the back straightaway. And so he said, well, okay, thanks. So he goes back down to his car. And like I said, we're at Syracuse. He come down later after he got his marbles back in his bag. He said, you are a butthole. He said, man, they're fixing to take me to the hospital. I got to tell him about Chillicothe and everything. I said, oh, man. So that didn't bleed me very much after that.
Yeah, I'd say you learned a lesson there.
Yeah.
What do you think made Steve so great? And we can talk about Carl all we want. And Carl's probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest mechanics ever. But he had to have an amazing driver in Steve as well. And what do you think made Steve so special?
Well, he had the professor, might as well call him as a tutor to begin with, you know what I'm saying? He started out with a couple other cars, but when he got with Carl Kinser, he learned everything the right way. He had the best of everything, the smartest guy. And Carl might have been able to do that for anybody else, but it was Steve that he chose. And, you know what I'm saying? Then Steve broke up with Carl and kept winning. So, whatever he learned from him, he learned it all and he remembered it all. So that helped him just keep being Steve Kinser. He added to the record. And, but I said a lot of it was a tribute to Carl Kinser without a doubt, Right. But look at his record. He got Sheldon Kinser is related and his dad, Bob Kinser. And then, his brother, Randy's a real good race car driver. And Kelly, his cousin. And I mean, there was half of Indiana. I mean, they all had the talent. So,
Mark. Mark's.
Mark, yeah, I forgot about Mark. Yeah, Mark also.
Yeah. I'm going to throw one more name out there because we can't talk about this era of racing, especially USAC racing, without this one name, Rich Vogler.
Yeah. I tell you, the problem was, and like I said, he was a great talent, without a doubt. And he crashed a lot of people.
Yep.
And for a long time, I thought he just did it on purpose, But I think what it was, his glasses were so thick that it got his distance off over to the side, and he crashed. I got into it with Rich up at Santa Fe one time, and that was the second time he crashed me, so I had to stop it. But then we was at Eldora, and he was driving for Strikers, and at the All-Star Speedway final, and we tied in points, so we had to go up to the grandstand, up to the judge's stand to flip to see who started on the pole and outside pole. And we was going up there, and I got my arm around him, and I said something. He said, "Jack, is it that bad?" I said, "Let's put it this way, Rich. If I wasn't here," I said, "I'm the only one here that does like you." I said, so, and he got to laughing, But yeah, I had a lot of time for Rich. I didn't early on, but later on, then you get to understand a few more things as you get older, I guess. And now, like I said, what a talent, because he could about drive anything also.
So when you look at the different eras of racing, like we're talking about, was there ever another era that you wish you were able to race in, or were you happy with the era that you raced in? And I guess kind of a follow-up question to that is, was there maybe is there a driver that you wish you would have been able to race with that you never got the opportunity to race with?
Well, my era I liked would have been the non-roll cage days, which my driving style I wouldn't have lived very long, But we crashed a lot. I tell people this day, of all the things they describe my driving style, smooth and patient was never described in my driving style with those two words. So I probably wouldn't have lived very long, but I got to race with my hero. Of course, that was my dad. I got to race for him quite a bit, and yep, I'm happy with life, man. You always can wish this and wish that, but we lived in the best times ever on earth, and I don't mean just for racing, but for muscle cars, mini skirts, our music that they're still listening to today, which they're going to be listening to in 50 years. They won't be listening to this rap crap, So no, I'm not. I don't want to change nothing. I'm good.
So when you look at guys today, obviously Kyle Larson wins everything that he gets in. How do you think that and it's easy for someone like me from the outside saying, oh yeah, he could have raced against AJ Foyt or Jack Hewitt and still win races. But I mean, when you look at someone like that, do you think they would have adapted kind of in the era that you raced in, or kind of what do you think about, someone like Kyle Larson or maybe Christopher Bell?
Well, I don't, it's hard to look back, you've seen them take the fighters and they try to make a mock fight on the computer of
right.
Who would win between, them and then things. Well, to me, AJ Foyt was getting anything to drive, so would Andretti, and then I think the one that started on the short tracks more than anybody was Kenny Schrader, without a doubt, and then we kind of come along after that, and then Tony come along and he'd win in everything too, and he just got more opportunities than I did, and probably Kenny. And he won on everything he was in, and then turned around, and then came Kyle Larson, It just, for the generation, they just step. I would hate to have to pick one to go, if you went to 4 different generations and had them race, I don't know who would come out in the end, Tony is definitely one of the better ones, and so is Kyle Larson, but I don't think you want to take nothing from Foyt or Schrader or Mario or any of those guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you were all men of your times. I mean, you can only race again in the era that you're in, right?
Yeah. So. Well, the thing that I think that I've put out there, and I've said it the wrong way for a long time, and I never realized it, but I've never been a fan of women race car drivers, sprint car drivers, I guess, race car drivers in general. As far as like when Janet Guthrie and Lindsay James got to go to Indy, they only got to go there for one reason: they were women. Well, and then we got, like along came Sarah McCune, and then Sarah Fisher, Aaron Crocker, and the guys asked me, they said, well, what do you think about, the women? I'm going to put them in an article or whatever. I said, look, you can't take nothing away from them because they've earned their mark in sprint car or open wheel racing right now, whatever it may be. But, they weren't part of the foundation. And when people talk to me about open wheel, I always go back to the foundation, and the women couldn't have done it back then without power steering, or neither could probably Kyle Larson when they had a trouble back in the AJ Foyt Raleigh Bill days. You know what I'm saying? It was a different time, but today you can't say that women don't belong there because they're just as good and they win races and do everything. But I've kind of been bad enough, and what it was is, like I said, I just never understood what big ovaries meant, but they've got them today, and they weren't part of the foundation. That's the only part they missed out on, was the foundation.
We actually had this conversation with somebody else, and a really kind of a strange phenomenon is that in quarter midgets, there are a lot of very competitive girls. In quarter midgets, you age out about 14, 15 years old. And they're very competitive. They win a lot of races and that sort of thing. But I don't know if it's the maturity of the males catch up as physically or exactly what happens. But it seems like from like 15, 16 on, a lot of the women quit the sport, and more of the guys stay doing it. And I don't know quite why that is. I don't know if they lose interest or if it's not. It's just hard to quantify. I don't root against women. I'm always waiting for the day that we have someone who is really competitive. I like good race car drivers. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. Right.
And I could care less. Your gender, your color, your anything. I want to see great race car drivers. And Sarah Fisher wasn't bad.
No, absolutely.
And Erin Crocker, who's now Erin Evernham, she was a really good sprint car driver.
Luckily for me, I was already out when they were in. And like I said, they were so good, they would have beat me. And I would have hated to have been beat by a girl. I mean, I'm just from the old school. And they would have beat me, there's no doubt. And they would have killed me. I thought, oh, my God, a girl beat me. Because, you just tease about it. But now, like I said, they are equal. The one that's committed, right. A lot of them that you're talking about, the quarter midgets, a lot of them, not all of them, because you can't put it all in one group. But I'd say a lot of them, their dads wanted to race, and they only had girls. So they got in there, and they're good at what they do. Because like you said, they're probably a little older and more refined, and it's easier to beat the boys. But then when the boys get up there, they get old enough, they don't want to do this anymore, because dad, their dad wanted more than they did.
What something I found to be a strange, what I would call a phenomenon, is these kids start so young today that sometimes by the time they get into a sprint car, they look like they've got a ton of talent. And they do have talent. But their talent never really ever progresses past the point of where they're at. They're as good the first day they run that sprint car as they are the last day they run that sprint car. And I've seen that when we had the parts business, we saw that quite a bit. And that's quite a difference from your era, where you didn't start racing at 6 years old. You ran it. You were lucky to get the hot lap at a young age. A lot of guys didn't even start till they were 21.
I didn't start racing until 23.
Yeah. So there you go. And it's a really interesting thing, because you see some of these kids come along and they have these really short careers. On the surface, they look really short because we only see them run the sprint car and midget for 5, 6, 8 years, but we missed the 14 years before that.
Yes.
Right.
And Jeff Gordon come along, when he was 13 and came back here, and I was one of the big supporters of Jeff, because Bert and them, they said, well, he's only this young, and I really didn't know him. I just I knew who they were, but I'd watched him race before and things like that. And I said, let me tell you the difference. I said, when Jeff Gordon got on the track, if he runs the bottom, the first lap, he's going to do 20 24 more laps on the bottom. I said, if he runs the top, he's going to do he's not all over the racetrack. You know where he's going. I said, there's guys that's raced for 20 years, and I have no idea what direction they're going in.
Right.
But so now everybody has set that standard, and they all want their kids in there younger, and I don't know. I'm not a big believer in the kids being in. They're too violent of a race car, you know. I mean, to let them in a sprint car right now, I mean, you're asking a kid, yeah, you want to drive a race car? Well, absolutely. You know, well, that's why they have parents to say, not yet, you know. But they're doing it. They're getting by with it. We haven't hurt too many of them, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it kind of hurts the fan count a little bit because it's hard for someone who's 30 years old to root for someone who's 16, 18 years old. It's hard for a grown adult to root for young drivers. I think that's hurt a little bit on the fan side. And I could be wrong. That's anecdotal. So, you know, that may be just my opinion, but it's really interesting, you know, just to kind of see that phenomenon. Well, Jack, we, hopefully one of these days we're going to get you into a studio and we'll get you to really where we can tell some stories and that. But I always like to, on my end of it, kind of wrap up the show with a general question. And this question is, and this person could be anybody, and I know you've had a lot of great mentors, and we may have already talked about this person. But it gives the person we're interviewing a chance to acknowledge a person who meant a lot to their career. And it could, like I said, it could be a family member, it could be anybody. Is there anyone that we haven't talked about yet that you would like to just say, man, that person really made a huge difference in my career?
Well, you know, like I said, my dad was a big part of my deal along with the mechanics, but I have to go and thank Rick Ferkel probably as much as anyone he got me a ride in 1976 out in California. And what can I say after that? We could get rides in California or anywhere in between. And because of me going to California, I got to go to Australia and everything. So I guess I got to put a big thank you to Rick Ferkel for a lot of it because he opened a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, and I know that Critter Malone drove for Sealings for a while, and with Rick was in charge of that deal. And I know Rick, you know, really liked Critter. They didn't win a lot together; they won a little bit together. But I know, man, it just kind of seemed like Rick was well, it just seems like he's just a racer looking for competitive people to race with.
Yeah, and, to think like him.
Yeah. So, well, that's a great answer. And for me on my side, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Aaron, do you have?
I just have one question. When was the last time, Jack, that you actually got in a race car?
2014.
Okay, cool.
At the 4 Crown, and we turned around and we put a tire on because it started taking rubber. We changed tire at the last minute, went to the next harder tire, and it wasn't balanced. And at the 25th lap, that's when it rained out that night. We ran it Sunday afternoon, which helped me because I couldn't do tear-offs anyways. And like I said, we'd probably run around 11th or 10th or 11th at the time, and they kept popping tires. I'd say we'd have finished in the top 8 hadn't that tire been out of balance, but who knows, But at least I was out there hacking at it.
Right. No, I think that's great. Seeing guys like you, guys like Sammy Swindell, I mean, obviously racing's in your blood, and, a lot of those guys will race, as long as they physically and mentally can.
Well, like I said, there's nothing to take its place. I mean,
right.
It's hard to quit something when, you can't replace with something of equal value. And once you drove
Absolutely.
A sprint car, there's nothing out there going to ever take its place. I don't care. And like I said, Tammy went and had Kevin. My boy raced a little bit. Steve's boy still races, and they say, oh, yeah, I like watching my boy race. Yes, I do too, but not as much as I do racing.
Well, and I think you mentioned Mario a while ago, and I think that is a prime example of like when Mario raced against Michael, or when Big Al raced against Little Al. Man, they gave those kids no quarter.
No.
Man, they would race those kids as hard as they would race, or maybe harder than they'd race someone else.
Yeah, my dad stuck me in the wall going into one at one time. And Dad, what's going on? He said, man, I ain't got time to waste for you. You know, you're learning. I got to go racing, you know. Yeah, he put me right in the fence. So, yeah, I know they don't give you no slack.
Well, I think if I remember this incorrectly, or if I'm telling this wrong, I apologize to anyone listening, but I think Richard Petty's first win was actually taken away by his father, who protested the win. And his father ran second, and his father ended up winning the race.
No joke. I never heard that.
If I told you that story in error, I apologize, but I think you can find that where when Richard's first wins was Lee protested and took it away from him.
Well, that's a pretty good story, no matter what.
But well, Jack, for me, you provided just years and years and years of being able to watch a professional do his job at his highest capacity. And thank you for everything you've done, giving yourself, and thank you to your family for giving so much to the sport, because it is truly a family effort. And again, I just want to say thank you, and hopefully we see each other soon. Like I said, hopefully we can get into a studio one time with this podcast, and you can really share some stories with us, and you know, just have a great time.
Well, the thing about it is Friday's my anniversary, so you want to talk about somebody tough. She's been with me for 35 years, so yeah, I guess I better give her a pat on the back, because I don't know if anybody else has been that strong.
Yeah, that's she's been through a lot, hasn't she, Jack?
Yeah, she has. She's been a nurse and everything else, so yeah, I better mention her for daggone sure.
Well, Jack, thank you so much. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it to the King's Royal, and I'm glad you mentioned that it is July. I got confused because there is a race. There is a World of Outlaw race at Eldora, September 24th, before the Crown Showdown. I think I got confused with that one.
No, there is one right there before the Full Crown. You're correct. The Friday night, the World of Outlaws, and Saturday's the Full Crown. Yep, you're right.
Right. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to make it to the Kings, and I'll let you know for sure. But yeah, thank you so much, Jack, for taking the time and talking to us.
Well, we just thank you for having us and letting us tell a few stories.
Well, yeah, and happy anniversary, Jack.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.